Hello. Today we're going to begin week 9 of our study. And this week we're going to look at the road to World War II, focusing upon local aggression by Italy, Germany, and Japan, and see how the local aggression will ultimately lead to the beginning of World War II. Today, let's focus on the chronology of this local aggression. If we're going to look at local aggression from a chronological order, we need to begin with the country of Italy. However, for all of this local aggression to make sense, we need to take a second and focus on the League of Nations. The League of Nations didn't last very long, but the League of Nations was an international organization that was formed after the First World War. The idea behind the League was for the organization to maintain world peace. In other words, if two countries had a dispute, they'd go in front of the League and have their differences settled in a peaceful manner. This whole idea of the League of Nations was brought to the peace table by President Wilson of the United States. President Wilson, you recall, wanted World War I to be a war to end all wars. But if you recall, Great Britain, France, and Italy had revenge on their mind. And President Wilson, the only thing that he could get out of his proposals pretty much to create a world without war was the League of Nations. However, when the president returned, he could not convince the U.S. Senate to go along with the League of Nations. So here, the United States, a brand new world power, and the strongest country in the world after World War I, but yet we did not join this international organization. Please keep this organization in mind as we look at the chronology of local aggression. Let's look at Italy. The gentleman that's in the picture on this slide, that's the Italian leader, Benito Mussolini. He's going to come to power in 1922. If you recall from last week, Italy was a weak country, a fairly young country, and what had happened in Russia scared many Italians. The idea of the government owning all businesses and all land definitely scared the young, weak Italian government. When Mussolini came to power, his goal was to increase the power of Italy. And one way to increase the power of Italy was to strengthen the Italian military. Let's think about the ramifications of strengthening the military. One, unemployed men are going to have a place to go. They're going to go ahead and enlist in the military, serve in the military. Factories who are struggling with a slow economy are going to be busy making war goods. Farms are going to be busy supplying agricultural products for the soldiers. So one way to get out of an economic slowdown is to build up your military. And that was Mussolini's idea. We're not going to hear much from Italy until 1935. And in 1935, Mussolini's updated modern military is going to invade the country of Ethiopia. If you recall, this is the same country that 5 decades earlier defeated Italy. Why invade Ethiopia? To show the Italian people that they had a new leader, a new military. And what did Ethiopia do? Ethiopia went to the League of Nations asking for help. And what did the League of Nations do? They scolded Italy. No action taken against Italy that did anything. And Mussolini basically said to the Romans and to the Italians, hey, this is just the first step in rebuilding the Second Roman Empire. Kind of gives a clear message of what the Italians under Mussolini want to do. And remember, the League of Nations protests, and that's it. Well, in 1936, Italy is going to gain a partner. That partner they're going to gain is Germany. By 1936, Germany is now being led by a man named Adolf Hitler. And in October 1936, the Rome-Berlin Axis is formed. In other words, an alliance between the countries of Germany and Italy, both which will be fascist nations. Fascism is the idea of building up your country's military, strengthening the industries, but yet these industries are going to be owned by individuals and corporations. Well, 3 years later, in April 1939, 4 years after the invasion of Ethiopia, Italy is going to annex Albania across the Adriatic Sea. Why Albania? Albania, at this time, and still is today, one of the poorest nations in Europe. They're not going to be able to put up much of a fight. Let's turn our attention to Japan. Steps towards local aggression in Japan begin as early as 1931. Because in 1931, Japan invades the northern sections of China, known as Manchuria. You can guess what's in Manchuria. Yes, you're right, natural resources. That item that Japan lacks that they need to become an industrial power. Again, the League of Nations protests. But that's it. In Japan, when the League of Nations protests, simply walks out of the meetings and leaves the League. The League of Nations is basically 0 for 2, unable to stop local aggression twice as early as 1931. After World War I, the major nations of the world agreed to some things so a world war would never take place. One of the things they agreed to was to limit the size of their armies and navies. In 1935, Japan broke that agreement by beginning to build up its naval stockpiles. A clear signal that Japan was ready to become aggressive. In 1937, Japan invaded China. And remember what was happening in China. A civil war. The Chinese Civil War ended as the two warring sides came together to fight Japan. However, they were helpless against the Japanese, and Japan was able to gain control of 1/4 of the country. If we were studying World War II in China, in Chinese books, World War II begins in 1937 with the invasion of China. When we get together on Monday, we're going to look at what was taking place in Germany during this time. We'll see you on Monday.